perspective, and here's the big one, that Merck also continued to conceal what it knew about the diminished efficacy of its mumps vaccine even after significant mumps outbreaks in 2006 and 2009. So between this lawsuit and the two virologists who went public with their False Claims Act, they allege that Merck actually contributed to the outbreaks of mumps that were witnessed across the United States over the last several years. In other words, the very company that manufactures a vaccine that claims to be stopping the pandemic of infectious disease, mumps in this case, is in fact the very company that is causing the spread of disease. That's a pretty clever scam, quite a ploy, if you will, to sell more vaccines. You cause the outbreak, then there's a scare about the outbreak. The CDC jumps on board and says, hurry up, everybody go get vaccinated to stop the mumps, and they blame the non-vaccinated children for causing the outbreak, and that results in more parents taking their kids to be vaccinated, which then results in more profits to the drug companies for selling the very vaccines that are based entirely on fraud to begin with. Imagine that happening in America today. But that's not the end of it. There's one more company that's relevant to this discussion here on INFOWARS Nightly News, and it's Pfizer. Pfizer is now being sued by many of the top retailers, pharmacy retailers in the United States, including H-E-B pharmacies in Texas, by the way. And they claim that Pfizer is engaged in an anti-trade conspiracy of sorts to prevent generics from coming onto the market that would compete with Pfizer's sales of Lipitor. It's hugely profitable cholesterol drug, which sells about $9.6 billion worth of drugs in a given year. Yeah, really, almost $10 billion worth of drugs. No wonder they're trying to keep competitors off the market, according to this lawsuit. So if you put all this together, you've got GlaxoSmithKline now admitting to felony crimes. You've got Merck, whose own whistleblowing scientists say the mumps vaccine has been based on fraud for at least 10 years, maybe much longer, that it doesn't work and that it actually contributes to the spread of infectious disease in America. And then you've got Pfizer being accused of anti-competitive, monopolistic, price-fixing, anti-trade practices that's trying to, according to the allegations, prevent generic drugs from competing with its blockbuster Lipitor drug. You put it all together, what do you get? You get an industry of complete medical fraud. It's a hoax. Much of modern medicine today is a hoax, and in fact, instead of helping you, many of those medicines and vaccines just harm you. But they convince you to buy them, and they convince states to enact mandates that force people to take these vaccines. We've got one more segment for you here from another guest, Sean Nimai, who we spoke to today. He's a former U.S. Army medic. He had an experience about how the vaccines are being forced on U.S. soldiers in the military, active duty in Afghanistan in his case. Turns out that an experimental vaccine for the H5N1 hoax pandemic was given to the military with instructions to have it injected into all the soldiers. But this gentleman, Sean Nimai, he said, well, he was in charge of over 100 soldiers over there as a medic, and he said, I don't want to give it to my soldiers, and I don't want to take it myself. And they threatened to have him fragged for it, yeah. Threatened to have him thrown in a locker with a live hand grenade because he questioned the sanity of injecting yourself and your men with an experimental vaccine based on a completely false pandemic with the sole purpose of enriching the profits of the very drug companies that are scamming Americans every single day right now in 2012. That is what's happening in America today. So check out this segment from Sean Nimai.
In 2009, I was in Afghanistan, stationed there for a year deployment with the 10th Mountain Division. I refused to receive or give the H1N1 experimental vaccine at that time. It was received at the time with a little bit of distrust from my chain of command. But once I explained to them that it was an experimental version, I didn't feel safe giving it to soldiers when I didn't even have a pamphlet that normally comes with medications and immunizations. We had no literature
really
at all.
So they just said, here it is, take it, and we're not going to provide any information about it. Just trust us, basically. Is that what they said?
It was generic labels on the bottles. All it said was keep refrigerated, and this is the dosage.
Wow,
that's what we were told about it.
So what caused you to have red flags about it? Why would you even suspect the safety of it in the first place?
Well, part of the biggest reason that I questioned it to begin with was the fact that there was no literature. I'm kind of OCD about making sure that I read all the literature to all the medications that I'm supposed to give to my soldiers. When there was no literature brought with the vaccines, I requested from the Brigade Medical Services Office, hey, you guys forgot to send the literature with this. And they said, no, there isn't any. Just follow the directions on the labels that are on the bottles, and you'll be fine. So at that point, I decided that it was time to look a little deeper into things. Found out that there was actually 3 different batches, 3 different formulas of the H1N1 vaccines that were being mass-produced for human use. 2 of them were being distributed to civilians all over the world. The 3rd one was being distributed to U.S. military members only. That also raised a couple of red flags. Yeah, the special soldier edition with no documentation. So let me ask you this. How many soldiers were you in charge of in terms of their medical care? I don't remember the exact number. It was a little over 100 of the U.S. soldiers from my unit and a couple of other units that were co-located with us, and then approximately 250 Afghan national forces that we did different missions in conjunction with them. Okay, and where did you receive your medical training, and can you describe it just briefly so everybody has a background of your medical background, so to speak? Yeah. After basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, I went to AIT's Advanced Individual Training, which is medic school at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas. Spent, I think it was about 4.5 to 5 months there, learning not only an EMT civilian side of emergency medicine, but also the Army side of tactical combat casualty care, which is a little more, I don't know what the exact word would be. It's a little more goal-oriented in keeping people alive, not so much keeping them pretty. Well, keeping them alive is a good thing, but then, so it sounds like with the vaccines, you were concerned about the implications of that experimental vaccine on the health of the people whose health you were, at least in part, responsible for. So when did you start getting resistance to this, and how did that emerge in your experience there? What happened to you? Because I saw at one point you were being threatened with even being fragged. Part of the preparation for the next upcoming deployment was we would have to go and have our medical records screened, get whatever immunization, shots, eye tests, dental screenings that's needed in order to go overseas. At that point, I decided, well, I'd already decided up until that point that I wasn't going to receive any more of the immunizations, vaccines. I talked with my wife, and we were in agreement that because of our religious convictions, that it wasn't right for us anymore for me to be receiving these. That at that point, I put in what's called a religious exemption request to basically get me an exemption from any and all vaccines, immunizations, prophylactic medications such as the malaria pills. Yes. I'm sorry? I said yes, and now that's a normal accepted procedure in the military. So why wasn't that accepted in the chain of command? What happened there? Well, part of the problem is that sort of an exemption is only approval denial up until company level commander. It doesn't have to go any higher than him. And my company level commander in a cavalry unit, it's called a troop. I don't think he liked me very much.
I have an affidavit here. Oh, I'm sorry, your voice cut out.
That's okay. I was just saying that there had been a history between him and myself during different training exercises and such. And I really don't think he liked me very much. So he had already made up his mind before he had looked into the regulations and whether or not I was even allowed to request such a thing. I'm pretty sure he already made up his mind that he was going to deny it and give me an order to go get shots.
So it sounds like this was a punitive, vengeful type of action targeted to you personally because of personal disagreements. Is that a fair characterization?
I would definitely say so, yes.
And then I have an affidavit here, sworn affidavit by a Sergeant Medic Team Leader, Anthony Comau, who supports your story and says that this captain began to refer to you as, quote, bacteria man, and said they want to throw you inside a wall locker and throw a hand grenade in with you.
Correct.
So that's a pretty serious accusation and a serious crime in the military, if true, indeed.
Yes. Even the act of stating anything about fratricide is actually a crime. It's against the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
All right, so there you have it. That's a wrap of the situation. We live in an extraordinary time of incredible deception from the big pharmaceutical companies and the vaccine manufacturers. The bottom line in all of this is those of us who were skeptical of the vaccines, we have been vindicated. So if you've been saying no to vaccines, if you've been trying to educate people or even perhaps argue with your ignorant doctor about vaccines, you were right all along. Vaccines are fraud, drug companies are criminals, and they're engaged in anti-competitive, monopolistic trade practices to simply bilk consumers for as much profit as they can get away with. And to a large extent, the U.S. government, now infected with rampant, deep criminality, is letting them get away with it. You're not going to get this report on any mainstream news source, but it is the truth, and it is backed up by evidence. Thank you for joining us here on INFOWARS Nightly News. This is Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, with a special report for INFOWARS Nightly News. Take care.
That's it for tonight's INFOWARS Nightly News, ladies and gentlemen. Just keep watching, and whatever you do, start fighting somewhere on any front. We're totally surrounded. Anything you do to advance the cause of freedom, to roll back tyranny, can only help us, and we need your help so badly. Join the Stop Obama Dictator contest. Subscribe to PrisonPlanet.tv. Start a page at PlanetInfowars.com. Whatever you do, get the word out and do it soon. We'll be back tomorrow.